Okay, here's a quick overview of the LCD boost controller. Right now I'm in the config menu, and right now it's asking what is my boost sensor, and it's currently selected as an MPX42AP, which stands for absolute pressure. The absolute pressure ones are sensitive to weather changes, so hence the reason why you see the next one. Allow barometer compensation. So if you have the factory MAF still in place in your car, it'll use your barometer to zero out your sensor. Screen refresh, a smaller number updates the screen more quickly. These are basically delays. A larger number is a larger delay. Contrast, here we can give a quick demonstration of what that does. Custom colors, you can set red, green, and blue. You can define your own custom colors for your LED on this screen. Just gonna skip by. You can toggle the startup color. Auxiliary input, there's an extra input inside the LCD boost controller, so if you have something like a alcohol injection and your fluid reservoir goes empty, you can set this LCD boost controller to automatically go to a lower boost setting. Car type, this is if you're a 3000 or a Stealth, you pick this. If you have a DSM, you pick the DSM setting. And if you have a nice flashable ECU like the 9899 ECUs, select yes. There's some slight differences in them. And if you have the Chrome ECU, again, pick yes or no depending if you have the Chrome software on your flash ECU. ECU type, we have three types essentially in our cars. You have OBD1, you have MUT. MUT's usually from 94 to 99. And then the 96 and 97 North American cars, some of them only speak MUT over OBD2, so, and those are really slow, unfortunately. Preferably you want MUT, and the second choice would be OBD1, and then MUT over OBD2. You're stuck with whatever your car speaks, so. ECU clock, if you're into that replacing your clock crystal on your ECU, for higher rev limits, your data login will cease to work. This is basically compensation for that, so you can communicate. Here you can define when do you want this LCD boost controller to flash the screen and saying you're knocking, and the audio buzzer will also beep at you too. Coolant alert, same idea. If you got something like a front mount intercooler, you can have this pointing out to you, hey, you're overheating. Cold engine off. Right now this is a if your engine is cold, you can define at what temperature you'll run at wastegate pressure. This is in case you have some idiot borrowing your car, or yourself, you forget. Data log, you got a few options in here. Mostly you'll leave it in a pass-through mode. You can quickly go through them. These are just if you don't have a data logging software, you can output the text to a terminal program. And if you got one of those climate control screens that can display TFT, you click on this setting here. Pass through, I would recommend I keep it at 57,600 baud, so nice and fast. It does have the slower baud rates for MMMCD, Pocket Logger, and some other old OBD1 software. 57.6 is what I recommend. You can test your solenoid, see if it's still working on your car. I'll click it. I don't think you probably can hear it, but it's in the engine bay. That's the little alert in case you're over boosting or something, or the LCD boost controller needs to get your attention. It also will flash the screen red. There's basically two types of cable for the LCD boost controller. Normal is just a regular data logging cable, and the enhanced one is my version, which cancels out the ABS lights. Here you get to define your wideband O2 controller. There's many versions out there. Let's go quickly through them. This is well, let's go through this thing. Pin 93 refers to the flash ECUs. Pin 93 is where some people have their wideband wired up to, so it'll read the data from there. Or you can read it from the LCD boost controller itself. Or pin 53 or EGRT on OBD1 cars. Or none if you don't have a wideband O2 controller. In this car it's set to wire. And you can set the low setting for the air-fuel ratio, the high setting of the air-fuel ratio, multiply factor in case there's something wrong with your sensor, and again if you need an offset if they don't agree. And you can display in lambda or AF ratio, air-fuel ratio. And if you're fortunate enough, you can even define a second wideband O2 controller. And 4 other extra sensors, such as EGT sensors, oil pressure sensors 100 and 150 psi, another wideband O2, oil temperature sensor, fluid temperature sensor, Stinger EGT, and flex fuel. Oops, I don't have a flex fuel. Let me put that back to none. And you can define offset for each of them, and alarms in case you're running low oil pressure or your EGT is running too high. Here you can set your preference to degrees Celsius or degrees Fahrenheit. If you want your boost displayed in PSI or bar. Tune monitoring, that's just basically in case you're running knock, you're lean at a certain RPM. The LCD boost controller will look up on its own little internal table and say, hey, you're leaning at this point. This is basically for those people that run piggyback and have seasonal changes. This will put it to your attention and say this is the issue. You need to richen up your tune or something like that. Monitor peak injector duty cycle. You can enable this. It gives you another data thing to view. I don't recommend to turn it on for people that have 96 and 97 over OBD2 mode because they're very slow to begin with. So this is the reason why this whole option is even enabled, or menu is even here. It's basically for them. You got to describe what coolant sensor is on your car. In my case, I have a 93 car, so I picked this one. There is about a 12 degrees Fahrenheit difference between the two sensors at certain data points, so it helps to have the right sensor described. Alright, I'm out of there. And as you see, that it said minus 0.3 psi initially, and now it's 0.0. It took about 2 or 3 seconds to connect to the computer, and once it got barometer information, it was able to compensate and keep it at 0.0 psi. So let's go through some of these menus. Zero out sensor. This is when you first time you set up your sensor in your car, or if you just enable that allow barometer set, or if you allow that allow barometer compensation, you need to run this option here. This is your duty cycle for your boost solenoid, similar to a Grady Profec. Duty cycle offset, let's look what that is. So at certain RPMs you can taper up to go higher and higher or lower and lower. Most likely you want it higher because that's what 9Bs turbos usually do. If you want to drop your boost pressure or duty cycle for a given amount of knock, you can do it right here. So it's up to you if you want the LCD boost controller to reduce boost pressure based on knock or small amounts of knock. If the knock goes away, you get your full boost back again. What boost PSI to alert you at, and if you exceed this or if it gets triggered, it'll go back to wastegate boost pressure for about 1 or 5 seconds. I don't quite remember. I have to look it up again. If you want to adjust your duty cycle based off of temperature. Auxiliary duty, that's for that's in case of the if you use the auxiliary input and it sees a ground, it'll adjust to this secondary boost setting. Normally you would have this at a lower value. Think of your alcohol injection. If you ran out of fluid or your fluid light came on, This is like the safety boost level. PSI start, PSI end. These are like cheaters. They give you a little bit. Basically, what it does is it runs 100% duty cycle right up to about 7 psi, and then when it reaches psi end, it basically tapers down to whatever you set it to, your main duty cycle. And in my case, it was about 40%. If you have these values too high, you'll have boost spikes. If you don't understand this, don't enable them. Just leave them at their default. I think default was 1 psi and 2 psi. You can adjust the duty cycle based off a load on the engine, or you can buy each gear. If you did have a message alert on your car and you didn't have time to glance at it, here you can review it again. It'll basically tell you how much knock you had at what psi, what was the wideband O2 reading, and at what RPM. Okay, now let's go through the ECU data. Oh, here we go. Here we got the fuel trims, and then your rear fuel trims. Throttle, if I step on the gas a little bit, you'll see it go up and down. Current coolant temperature, air intake temperature, engine timing, injector pulse, front O2, rear O2, battery voltage, and the voltage at your ECU. Idle switch, let me just click on the throttle just a little bit and you'll see it go off. You can, when you're adjusting your throttle cable, you can have somebody sit in your car and monitor this if you want. Idle steps. This is like your IAC. You can see how many, if it's working, I suppose. You can see what the ECU is sending. Barometer in inch mercury. Speed and what gear you're in. And here you can see if your external switch is working for your auxiliary input, or if it's wired up to your fluid, alcohol injection fluid. This is basically telling you whether it's triggered or not. Here you can read fault codes. Again, two types of fault codes right here: pending, stored. Pending is not. Pending is not. What would it say? It's not in the factory scan tool at all. It's something that the DSM crowd people found out. Stored faults is the ones that the Mitsubishi scan tool recognizes. You can clear faults. And for cars that are 96 and newer, North American, you basically got to use the OBD2 codes. If you're the European, you're probably going to be using these ones here. And then you can do a bunch of diagnostic tests, like turn on your fuel pump, purge solenoid, EGR solenoid, wastegate solenoid. If you're a non-turbo car, a VIX motor, fuel pressure solenoid, test your injectors. These injector tests are only work when the car is running. And what you'll see is a slight stumble when the injector's off for a few seconds. I believe it's about 5 seconds. You can turn on your exhaust mode. It's basically the same thing as you pushing the button on your dash. If you're adjusting your idle, you can force the timing to be at 10.5 degrees fixed, so you can adjust your idle. For 94 cars and newer, you can run your fan high, run your fan low. Here's the fuel pump speed change, like basically the low voltage or high voltage switch over. And here it describes the ECU ID number. For 1996 and newer, 96 and newer cars, you can go to the ABS menu and basically see the speed of each wheel, and read error codes and do some ABS tests in there. I have a 93, so I can't do it on this car. Okay, that's the end of this video.